Good afternoon, everybody. I think we can finally start. Apologies for this somewhat delayed start of our session. We had it scheduled for 12:30, and we had a number of minor difficulties that we had to cope with, and we are ready to move ahead. So. Once again, I reiterate my welcoming thoughts and remarks towards you. Welcome everyone to this panel on private sector engagement for the promotion of community cohesion. My name is Hugo Tavares Augusto. I am the head of unit of labor mobility and human development at the International Organization for Migration, the UN Migration Agency, in the office, in the country office here in Cairo. It is my pleasure to be to moderate and to steer the discussions here today alongside the members of the panel. We are going to take about 1 hour and a half for the discussions. I will move ahead with the modalities a little later. First off, I would like to first thank the Global Compact, the UN Global Compact, for this initiative. Thank every one of you for being here, and we hope to move ahead with an interesting set of discussions and an interesting set of debates. So I will very briefly present the panel that is sitting beside me. We have apologies because I have only joined this country very recently. I don't speak Arabic yet, so I'll try and put on my best accent. So we have next to me Amrousi from ECH Consultants. We have Salah Chowki from representing Innovative. We have Hani Fauzi from Step to Future. We have Salem Masalha from Basita, and finally, last but not least, Amira Al-Mala, yes, from Safarni. So welcome everyone. It is a pleasure to be here next to you. The focus of this session, as mentioned before, is on ways to engage with and to involve the private sector in the promotion of community cohesion, resilience, resilience to vulnerability, as well social instability, lack of integration, and in a way to bring together communities, both of foreign origin, migrants, asylum seekers, refugees, and Egyptian communities. We will focus in particular on the project that we implement with IOM Egypt, project called RDPP, Regional Development Protection Program, and it is very much in the frame of this project that we collaborate with all our colleagues here next to us. I will start by providing a few thoughts and presenting the work we carry out in both in my unit, but also in particular in the frame of the RDPP. So focusing a bit on what we do, what we have tried to achieve, and where we want to get to. And then I will thereafter I'll give the floor to each and every one of the panelists so that they can present as well the collaboration that they have carried out with us. After this, we will obviously open the floor for discussions, for debates, and we hope to have a positive set of exchanges and a good Q&A with everyone here. So just to briefly contextualize where we come from. IOM is the UN Migration Agency. We have 172 member states. We have joined the United Nations system in 2016, despite our existence dating back to 1951. So we have been operating in all sorts of contexts related to mobility for a very long time now. We work and we cater to migrants, to asylum seekers. We also support the UNHCR in providing support to refugees. We work with governments, we work with the private sector, with non-governmental organizations, and a very wide array of other partners, stakeholders, and beneficiaries. Here in Egypt, we have our work divided in four main areas. We work on migrant protection and assistance. We work on providing services, namely health services, to migrants. We also work on reaching out to institutional stakeholders to try and find ways to better promote our activities and our initiatives, to try and branch out as well, and find partnerships with a number of innovative stakeholders, as is the case of our colleagues next to us today. And finally, under my unit, we work on labor mobility and human development. So what is this? We mostly target our work or frame our work under three main pillars. One focusing on the promotion of labor mobility and labor migration channels. Another one on migration and development, the engagement with Egyptian expatriates. And finally, what mostly relates to what brings us here today, we work on a pillar focusing on community cohesion and resilience. We work very much along, or we try and provide answers, programmatic answers, and project-based answers to the conditions, to the underlying conditions, socioeconomic conditions here in Egypt. And in particular, if I may share a couple of figures that help situate our work and help situate what we do here. According to a study, the IWAM study on labor market trends between 2015 and 2030, at the current pace of population growth, that points out to a growing number of in about 1.5 million people every year until 2030. We see that so against this backdrop, we see that the economic growth and its pace will very likely produce about 750,000 jobs. Now, this is an easy equation to bring up together. This means that over the course of the next around 15 years, the population will rise twofold vis-a-vis the number of jobs that will be made available to the working age population here in Egypt. Now, this presents obviously enormous challenges in terms of how to integrate these people, these newcomers into the labor market, how to integrate them into the labor market, how to make sure that they will find jobs, decent jobs in the formal economy, that they benefit from social protection, from social security, they are indeed able to fully live up to their potential. This is where obviously the mobility dimension comes in. But we will not focus on this today. If in any way this aspect of how to find alternative ways for the integration of these populations, namely through migration pathways. We can obviously discuss them in a few months, but anyway, we are focusing more on how to integrate those that are already here, particularly the youth, particularly women, into the labor markets. So at these trends and at the pace these trends are occurring, we see that youth unemployment in particular is becoming a serious issue. In terms of the youth the overall youth or the young group, we see that about half of the employable workforce is currently unemployed. The current youth unemployment between the age groups of 15 and 24 is set at around 34%. Also the current participation of women in the labor force is now set at about 23%. So these numbers fall very much short of where they should be. We obviously work in direct relationship with the Egyptian government in trying to provide answers to some of these challenges. So the government of Egypt, through its Vision 2030, intends to reduce the overall unemployment rate from around 12% to 5% by 2030, and also to increase women's participation in the labor market from 23% to around 35%. So against this macro backdrop, and in the frame of some of the activities that we carry out, we have started implementing the Regional Development and Protection Program, the RDPP. It is a regional program. It is headquartered in Tunisia, and there are national compacts or segments that we implement on a national basis. The overall objective of the Regional Development and Protection Program is to strengthen the resilience of migrants and their host communities by addressing some of these socioeconomic concerns and challenges, and also to promote a culture of rights, of dialogue, and social cohesion between migrant communities and obviously Egyptian communities. We do so by engaging a number of actors and promoting a number of socioeconomic interventions in a way so as to promote a culture of rights-based approaches, of dialogue and social cohesion. In this framework, and because there is obviously the need to work on a very local level, so very close to the communities, we have carried out a lot of work, which obviously my colleagues here at the panel will be focusing on. But we have carried out a lot of work with the private sector, with non-governmental organizations, insofar as they have a much greater capacity to act locally. So, in doing so, we have been working with targeted communities, especially in migrant-dense areas, including organizations that comprise some of the panelists here, So Expertise Consultancy House, Step to Future, Basita, Safari, Innovative, etc. All of these organizations have been able to share their expertise through interventions, focusing on capacity building, focusing on awareness raising, focusing on promotion of financial literacy, of entrepreneurship and employability pathways. And I mean, they can be grouped more or less under the following areas: access to health, entrepreneurship, manufacturing, ICT, tolerance for diversity, amongst others. So you see the wide array of interventions that we have been carrying out in this framework. The idea is obviously to empower communities and make them more resilient and to be able to tackle vulnerability in a much more effective manner. Some of these interventions, as I mentioned before, have sought to empower vulnerable communities, namely through the development of their own businesses, some of which may bring in humanitarian considerations. So this is obviously, I mean, very much linked to bringing together a private sector and business approach with corporate social responsibility and social and humanitarian considerations at large. The aim of this panel is, is not just to present or to boast about what we have been doing, not just to mention that this is the path, but also to discuss and hear eventually from you all as well on what could be done as well. What can be improved? What views do you have on how to best engage the communities and how to best upgrade and enhance their livelihoods and at large their resilience to difficulties. Let me just say that just as a minor observation, the RDPP program has been ongoing for about 2 years, 2 years and a half. It will very shortly conclude its first phase. So we are now about to close the first intervention, and we look forward to linking up as well with future potential partners on the second phase that will start as of February 2019. So this is also a good way to eventually establish links for the future to move beyond and what we have already been doing, but also to improve and capitalize on the potential that all these interventions encircle. As I mentioned, the idea here is that the panelists can provide their overview and they refer to their accomplishments and achievements in this collaboration that we have ongoing since a while back. I think without further ado, and with a view to launch the discussions and to make sure that this will be as lively a discussion as possible, I'll give the floor to our panelists and yes, and I will invite Salem to start on behalf of Basita. Salem, please.
Hello everybody. Thanks a lot, Hugo. I'm very pleased to be here on a personal capacity first, because my mother is Egyptian Christian. My father is Palestinian Muslim. I was born and raised in Paris. I studied in Canada. I live in Egypt since 12 years, and people think I'm Indian. So for me, migration is something that is very, very important. And on a professional capacity too, because I'm the co-founder of the social startup Basita, who created a new model of fundraising and awareness raising for positive initiatives. Maybe you've seen some of our campaign. We launched a campaign with Helm and Drossos Foundation, supported by Atija Awafa Bank, to promote inclusivity for people with disability. We launched a campaign with UNICEF and Magat Kidwani to bring 1,000 water connections. And we launched a lot of campaigns with IOM to promote social cohesion, and every time very different and interesting campaigns. And afterwards, I have the opportunity to speak about them. So my name is Salem, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amira, and I'm from an organization called B4P. We're partnering with Basita under the IOM RDPP program. And so B4P we work on social inclusion. And one of the cool things is we work at the kind of foundational level of connections between people in societies. And we work through culture, which is something that's individual and shared. And we provide platforms for children and also their parents to come together and to learn about our similarities and our differences, and to ultimately come to accept diversity as a natural part of life, and also as something beautiful and something that makes us all stronger. So we're working in the RDPP program to bring together communities that are host communities for migrants here in Egypt, and to bring people together, migrants and Egyptians, through our platforms to see that we're all members of the society, we're all neighbors. And when we come to accept each other, it makes our society stronger together, and then provides space for economic access and all of the other aspects of prosperity in societies. So I'm excited to talk about our experience today. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ahmed Lucy from Expertise Consultancy House. We are operating in different fields, but mainly we are focusing on economic empowerment and gender empowerment. On economic empowerment with special focus on women. We have intervention with IOM and Helwan, with local community for migrants, economic integration, and we will give more info about it after, to keep the floor to me.
Hi everyone, my name is Sara Shawi. I'm a consultant at Innovity. At Innovity, what we do is both innovation and management strategies and digital. Under innovation, what we do is we help organizations, whether from the development world or from the corporate world, develop ideas for products, for services, for programs. And under digital, what we do is develop strategies that help us gather market intelligence. We do validations of services and also use it to reach out and to generate leads for corporates as well as other development organizations. And with the RDPP, what we're doing, we have worked on 3 programs. One of them is building a platform called Busla, which is operating in Egypt, Libya, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. This platform helps connect migrants with their service providers. So it disseminates information, but also it provides them with opportunities about what kind of workshops there are for them, what kind of scholarships are offered, and so on. And currently we're in talks with the IOM about starting a digital strategy for it to drive traffic and to analyze what kind of things that migrants are looking for, what are they mostly interested in, so that we can move on to bigger projects and different projects, as well as enhance the platform. Also, we're working on 2 other programs. One is called the Carving Career for Syrians and Egyptians. The other is Social Innovation for Syrians and Egyptians. And basically, they're both aiming to integrate the community of Syrians and Egyptians together in different contexts as they share a similar challenge. So the first one is Carving Career is more towards employment. We trained young Syrians and Egyptians, both males and females, around different tracks. We provided them with soft skills and then connected them to the job market through our partners. And in social innovation, we introduced them to everything about social entrepreneurship and how can they come up with innovative business concepts and actually develop their businesses further in order to help the challenges within the community. And finally, they attended a pitching competition which we organized and received a number of rewards in forms of grants, such as mentorships and trainings. They can attend trainings with the EBRD. Basically, I'm going to be discussing this further with you throughout the discussion, and this is basically what we've been doing so far.
I'm Hani Fawzi. I'm managing Step to Future. Step to Future is a business consultancy, and we describe Step to Future as young. We believe we are young in spirit. We also socially responsible, and we believe this is a condition for doing good business, not kind of business. We also see ourselves as future focused. The future is coming, and we hope to help reshape or shaping it. Also, we are research driven, and we think this is what sets us apart. We all the time try to adapt and adopt new, recent, advanced methodologies and approaches, and as we can, technologies. We offer business and organizational development solutions to our partners in the civil society, for the non-for-profit sector. We offer organizational development to the very local civil society organizations to the international organizations, and on the business side, we also deal with the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to multinational corporations. In the two sectors, we believe we are able to hybridize with our expertise the ideas and concepts and methodologies and approaches of the both sectors. Within the frame of the RDPP, it's not our first project with IOM. We previously worked in another project, another framework, but within this project we are working in Azbat al-Haggana. Azbat al-Haggana, one of the hosting communities that, as Hugo was saying, that carry a lot of, have a lot of problems, a lot of shortage in infrastructure and in services, and it hosts a lot of migrants, asylum seekers, and it's again a big population of the Egyptians. One of the RDPP objectives was on the health issues in the hosting communities. We mapped that area, and we identified only one service provider. There is only one hospital there. And the challenge was how to help these communities, the small scale interventions within the RDPP framework to get better access to better health services. And this will be coming in details, I think, with the question of coming from the book. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much to the members of the panel. Thanks for your brief presentations. I think we will benefit from interacting and from dialogue. Unfortunately, let me just say we started with half an hour delay. I do not believe that the lunch will be also half an hour delayed in accordance. So we will try to make this as efficient as possible. We initially had envisaged about 1 hour and a half for Q&A, both questions posed by myself and by the audience. We will work with the time that we have, and I think we will still be able to accomplish the objectives of this session. So I would start without further ado. I would start with the first question directed at Amira. I would like to ask you to what extent Has your intervention contributed to community resilience in your opinion, and also to socioeconomic empowerment of the beneficiaries you've targeted?
So we work in a community here in Cairo, in RDPP, and also in Alexandria. And basically what we do is a program for children. And we bring migrant and Egyptian children together in the program through a really cool kind of innovative model where we do simulated travel adventures. So we introduce children to different cultures from around the world. And we're working with migrant children in RDPP, for example, from Sudan, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, some from Yemen and Palestine. And the children that we work with, they all live in RDPP, for example, they all live in the same community, they're all neighbors, but they go to different schools, for example. So the children, the Egyptian children go to public government schools, and the migrant children go to community schools. So they don't have an opportunity to get together, to get to know each other. So there's these kind of like imaginary barriers, thinking someone's skin color, for example, is different than mine, is fundamentally different than me. So what we do is we provide a platform to bring them together and for them to discover through our program, no, this person isn't fundamentally different. They might be differences in culture, similarities as well, but at the end of the day, we're both the same, and we can become friends. And so this, I mean, in a sense, community cohesion and these kind of things is kind of like the fundamental organizational aspect of any society. Like there's no socioeconomic empowerment, there's no economic prosperity, any kind of prosperity in society if people are fundamentally divided, if people aren't interacting together either through business or even just kind of peacefully in the streets and stuff like that. So we kind of work at that foundational level to break these kind of invisible barriers. And we also see that, like in the beginning, especially for migrant communities, there's a lot of fear of coming together. Like some of them haven't really interacted with Egyptians in such an intimate kind of setting where, for example, children are playing together and getting to know each other. So there's a fear because there's discrimination, racism that migrant communities face. So what we do is we also provide a platform for them to share their cultures. And like we do simulated travel adventures to countries like the USA and France, but also then to Sudan and Eritrea. So they can talk about and share their culture. And in this way we share with the community that their culture is also beautiful and important. And it empowers them and it gives them pride. And it also kind of like acts as an equalizing factor between the communities. And so we found that that's a really powerful way. Like sometimes the parents, for example, they have like different ideas about these people are different than me, so I can't interact with them. But when they see their children in the program, a Sudanese child and an Egyptian child becoming friends and learning about each other's culture and eating each other's food, it's something that really like impacts them, because their children are very important to them. So they see it's kind of an innovative way to come in and convince them that we can all accept each other and that this diversity is a part of our society and it's something that's not scary, it's something natural and that we can actually accept. So yeah, it provides kind of like a foundation for that socioeconomic empowerment. And if it's not there, if that kind of foundation of social cohesion is not there, then we can't achieve anything.
Thank you very much, Amira. Henny, how do you see this as well?
Okay, I think this is what the heart of our intervention. We thought how to strengthen the resilience of that community, how to support the vulnerable migrants, asylum refugees, asylum seekers, and again the hosting community side, because the communities, the areas poor, the communities poor, and it lacks the main services, especially the health. And again, within this framework of the RDPP, we cannot build a hospital, we cannot build a new hospital. But what we thought about is how to find the leverage point, how to get where to intervene in that system to change the behavior of the system, to make the community getting better health care, informed and planned. So we built on the community assets. We created a new business model for the service provider. This new business model is based on knowledge, on how to capture data and how to manage knowledge to create better healthcare. That was done through three things. First was making electronic medical records to capture data, all the data, all the community, everybody getting into the hospital. The hospital is offering outpatients and inpatients services. Also, there is infantile for the infantile incubator, what's its name? Incubators, right? Yeah. And also they do some general and orthopedic surgeries. So for each one in the community, everyone has a right to get that, has medical records that creates a history, a healthcare history for that individual, whatever the differences he's carrying. He's Egyptian, he's not, he's disabled, he's whatever, male, female, all the differences, they get the same medical care, and with this information we can think about the bigger area and how it can get better services. We can identify the real problems, we can identify the opportunities for good health, and on the individual level everyone had that better service. And we tried to, through this, build a sustainable model for the hospital, for the service providers, sustainable model through better funding opportunities, because this service provider is living on donations, as a lot of similar places in the country. After having that knowledge, after managing the knowledge they already have, they can create funding opportunities better, and we developed a communication system for the hospital to better accessibility from the community and for the other stakeholders, including donors and whoever can help to get better. Again, we promoted the culture of rights, because the right of good health was an important thing in the project, and that was, we were making a lot of meetings with the patients during the visits. Those patients are the Egyptians and non-Egyptians. We all the time talk about how they can get better service, how can they get informed service, how can they get planned medical service, and this is a right for all, and consequently, the cohesion here comes smoothly. We don't go and make special things for them. Here, the base of getting the same rights for everybody, that's what we believe, how we can create cohesion in again, this intervention helped the community to get scalable, sustainable model for healthcare. This model could be, because of the idea of knowledge management, because of the idea of the medical records, that could be scaled and multiplicated. They can do it in several ways and communicate with other service providers if any service provider would come. Finally, on the level of the individuals, especially for the migrants, because they transfer a lot inside the country and outside the country, finally, because of the language barriers, when they go to another healthcare provider, they get confusions and some problems arise. So now they can get a printed medical history that includes everything that happened to him or her through the time they spent in that area, and can move it with it either to their home countries or another country or even another place in Egypt.
Thank you, Hani. You mentioned a number of keywords that I retain: the role of technology, sustainability, but also culture of rights. I think these are quite important. Focusing, we'll get back to sustainability. But focusing on the role of technology, I would like to ask both Sarah and Salim, how do you feel technology and especially the opportunities presented by digital platforms, by social media, by issues such as innovative funding mechanisms. How do you feel that these and other digital opportunities, so to speak, how did they influence your work, and how do you feel this could have made an impact in your work in RDPP, if it did, and if not, how do you see a path for the future? How can technology be beneficial to this type of interventions?
Okay, so I want to start with the area that it is beneficial in terms of what my colleague just mentioned, that it is scalable, very scalable. As I mentioned, we built the Postla platform, which is basically a directory. Before we used to have yellow pages on paper printed. Now we can reach a model that is crossing borders and even regions. So to the fact that through digital mediums we can build such platforms that instantly can provide any beneficiary that we can come across with the information that they need and connect two people who are not in the same location or who are just miles away, and then we can connect them with just a click of a button. This is one thing, so it shortens the distances between people. That's one thing, and the fact that it's scalable, I can replicate the same model just by customizing some features or the content that they provide. Like for example, in the case of Postla, the types of services or service providers that are in Egypt are different than those in Libya or Morocco or so on. So it's just about populating the content, but the idea is the same. You can replicate it easily. Also, it's beneficial as for in the case of social innovation and carving career. It helped us a lot in recruiting different groups. We implemented a digital campaign where we create landing pages just for people to register on to our program, so we can design the message that we want. We can target the people with the profiles that we want through the digital profiles, or their social media profiles. It's very easy. It's very easy targeting, and it generates more quality leads. Of course, it's not just about the online. It's also necessary to have the offline, but online helps us in the filtration process and the reaching out and easing the process of having people to apply, so that they are more encouraged to join. And it's also a great way to confirm with people. Like we send them emails, we direct them to a certain page to perform a certain action. So it's also easier to have like a one-stop shop where people just go there and register or send a request or whatever. So yeah, it does have a lot of impact, and it has impacted our project. And also I believe that moving forward, using digital, we can the development world is not really eased into the idea that we can use the technology, and for most people technology maybe it's a scary thing, complicated thing, but it's actually not, and it has very interesting tools. Like maybe my colleague Marwan can talk to you about it after the discussion. We have something called social media listening, which if for example you are on a certain group, even if it's a closed group or whatever, and you have a certain topic that people are discussing, this tool analyzes the type of content that people and the type of comments that people are talking about, and they can say that for example, this group of people, this topic is negative or is sad or is happy and so on. So if we use these tools, we can even design more customized and tailored programs to help our beneficiaries in different ways. So I believe I can leave it from today.
Thank you very much, Sarah. In your case?
Thank you very much. I think technology can help us sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't help us. I will just ask a question. How many people in this room already migrated or is currently a migrant? How many people? I think we look at the image of us. I think we look good, right? Now if you Google migrants, this is Google image. look at the image that you're having right now. People in the boat sinking in the Mediterranean Sea. This is Google image. So sometimes technology can work against us, because this is a narrative that is right now being constructed internationally about migrants. So the question that I want to ask is, how can we use technology to tackle this negative narrative about migration? And in this case, I will go and speak a bit about our initiative with RDPP program, ممكن تاخد الويب where we release a campaign for Safarni. So we do click funding. What is click funding? We make a social media campaign. The more web user click, the more web user interact, the more the sponsor will provide money for the NGO. Why do we do that? Because we want to integrate the millions of youth in Egypt that really want to help. Maybe they have no money, maybe they don't have time, maybe they don't know how to help. And it's a fantastic generation. It's a generation that is very tech and digital savvy, and it's a generation that really want to be integrated. So the idea is to make a campaign in order to promote social solidarity. I may not have time to screen the video, but I will just show you the KPI. Scroll down. On this campaign, we had more than 26,000 people that liked the campaign. So what was the message of the campaign? The message of the campaign was peace, was tolerance. It was a value that Safani was being defending right now. You had more than 900,000 views and more than 7,000 comments. Bushra, who is a cause ambassador, she posted on her Instagram, on her Facebook, Yoel Saba, the media partners. Everybody contributed to give the opportunity to the youth, and not only to the youth, to everybody, to click to promote social tolerance. So when we go back to technology, we are in the tech for good because we track all of this interaction that happens on a good cause. So sometimes technology can help, sometimes it doesn't help. And because all of these people interacted, IOM was the main supporter of the offline impact. Safari is right now unable to do this activity in Arbeloa. So sometimes there is a disconnection between the offline and the online. And in the case of our collaboration with Safari and IOM, the Rousseau Foundation, we really enable the online to trigger the offline impact.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Salim, and thank you very much, Sarah. Indeed, I mean it's essential to put these tools into good use. I think I mean something that Sarah just mentioned is also interesting. That the development world, I mean the development humanitarian nexus is still somewhat resistant to employing these tools. I would be the first one to present myself as a bit of somewhat old-fashioned in this. I mean, I'm fascinated by the interventions that for instance IOM has been carrying out. But I was just reading in an article the other day about the role of technology linked to the involvement of the private sector in promoting a culture of business towards achieving some of the SDGs. In particular, this was an article, an interview with the director for innovation at the WFP worldwide. So, and he was exactly referring to this. I mean, just how much potential there is, but how much resistance still exists in the organizations. Very big bodies, very big and very bureaucratic bodies in some of these organizations. Indeed, I think it's technology that makes the interventions, but also the general outlook a bit more flexible, and also, I mean, on a longer term perspective, also more sustainable. Getting into the issue of sustainability, because it was also referred to, I would like to ask Amar, how was the concept of sustainability, of long-term sustainability, factored into your intervention?
The issue before sustainability, when we start working with local communities, it's about sharing the resources. The local communities always look for the migrant or the migrants, they are coming to share the resources with the economic, health resources, services. So the integration is always difficult. So how we took it from the perspective that how to attract or how to convince the local communities to work with migrants is about explaining that there are resources and there is a home for everyone. We started and we want to attract them by a community center. Our intervention, it's about vocational trainings, it's about handicrafts, it's about marketing, but we put it all under a community center. This community center is serving it's serving everybody, but mainly we involve the host communities. So our intervention is not for Syrian refugees, it's not for Yemeni, it's not for Iraqi, it's not for Egyptian, it's for everybody. This center is for women. This center is psychological support unit and legal support unit. People are full of legal issues, so this was our attracting point for them. Then when we start sustainability, we thought that the migrant is having 2 or 3 options. The first option that he will settle down, he or she will settle down in Egypt. The second option will be resettled in a third country. And the third option that he will be returned or he will go back to his country. So in order to work on the sustainability, we work mainly on entrepreneurship. So wherever you are, wherever you go, you are ready to do like market analysis. You are ready to look around you for local resources. You are ready to put a business plan. You are ready to start your business. So this was our intervention because the host community will remain. So it is the business center there. The community center is still receiving every day more people. It's still receiving now new nationalities that to settle down in Helwan. Before it was mainly Syrians, now we are receiving Yemeni, we are receiving Iraqi people. We are not receiving Africans because they are not in Helwan. So our sustainability, we tackle it from the migrant himself or herself, that he should be ready for any future scenario. Anywhere you go, you are ready with your resources, you are ready with your knowledge to start your enterprise anywhere.
Thank you very much, Amr. I would like to ask the panel throughout your interventions, if you can describe some of the challenges that you faced all throughout, in the conception phase, in the implementation phase. Please.
Okay. I think it's like 2 categories challenges. First was the justice of the place to make some technological intervention. You need some infrastructure and again, you cannot interfere with the infrastructure. So we worked with top-notch professionals. Technology in the technology aspect to get a solution that's creative and away from just putting money in. So again, they helped us so much in that, and I think that was a real challenge. The other one was the mindset. When you are dealing with a service provider in healthcare, you are dealing finally with doctors. And doctors, they are doctors. They all the time know everything from their side, from the health side, and they are right, they know a lot about that. The issue is we were changing the business model, and here it becomes a difficulty to deal about how you are offering a low-cost medical service, and we want you to make it informed and plan medical care away from it. That they thought all the time that the community just needs low cost, and the changing of the mindset from low cost to informed and planned medical care was a bit difficult. But the time and the successes, small steps we made every time they felt that there's a real add-on to them and a real benefits coming to them in terms of practice, in terms of making the visits of the patients shorter, so they exert less efforts, they serve more patients, again, with the same time, with the same everything. The service provider is doing what the daily routine job, but we changed how the job is done, and it worked.
Thank you very much, Hani. Amira, can you also refer to some of the challenges that you faced while implementing Safari?
So I think one of the main challenges we faced was gaining the trust of the people that we work with, the families mostly and the children themselves. Because like a lot of our other panelists, we bring Egyptian and migrant communities together, and for a lot of people it's the first time they're coming together in a program like this. So you have to convince both the migrant community and the Egyptian community of the importance of the program, and also kind of explain to them why you're doing it, and have them trust and engage. So I think, it's a challenge and it's an opportunity at the same time. And one of the things that we do is we're working with the community, so we work with local community organizations that already have gained community trust there. So we work with an organization in RDPP, for example, called Tadammun. They already work and serve and have a community school. So the migrant community already trusts them in order for them to come to our program in the first place and be open to the idea of being in a program with Egyptian families and children. And then we work also with another local community organization that serves Egyptians in Ardadoa called Shed Watan. And so that's kind of one of the initial barriers, is gaining people's trust so that they enroll their children in our program, and then we can build this acceptance of difference and diversity and show people how natural and beautiful it is. But I think, just kind of working through partnerships and local partnerships, and also being very transparent and open with people about what you're doing is important. And then also, we kind of talk about, we're getting at the core of, when we talk about culture in our program, culture is something that everyone can relate to, and it's a core part of our humanity, so I think that also kind of pulls people in and gets them to believe in the necessity of the program.
Thank you very much.
I just want to add something about Safari, because I'm really proud to collaborate with them. She was speaking, there are two fantastic NGOs, the migrant NGO, the Durban, and the Egyptian NGO are fantastic.
When you have a resilient society, when you have societies that with better capacity, you will get better business and better profit. The issue is we need to change that mindset of it's not charity, it's doing good business with better communities. When you have healthier people, you will get healthier customers. And so everything the business can do for the society, it returns back. If you are talking about an ecosystem that includes business people, NGOs, if all of them are being shaped, then the business will get better. So the link is clear for me. If you are doing good business in a good society, you will get more than if doing good business in a poor society, or in unresilient, or not empowered society. So empowering the society, having social responsibility in that terms, not in the terms of charity or just doing a favor for the society. It's not like that.
Thank you very much, Hani. Do you also agree with this, Amira, or do you think that we should move beyond this charitable kind of perspective in terms of the corporate social responsibility? And how do you see this?
Yeah, absolutely. Building off of what my colleague Hani was saying, I think, just in the basic sense, when you have a partnership between the private sector and the development sector, you're able to make a greater impact in both, in an economic sense and also in a development sense. And I think, the best example, I guess, is even just the partnership between Safari and Lucita. And like Sarah was saying earlier, we can work at the macro level and the micro level, and they complement each other. So at the macro level, there's social startup and the click funding campaign. We're raising awareness, we're also raising support, engaging people. At the micro level, we're actually working with the communities and building that social cohesion that some of the other panelists have emphasized. And like I said earlier, even we were just talking earlier, Sana was mentioning the contributions that Syrian migrants, for example, have made to the Egyptian economy. You know, building cohesion, making all kinds of migrants, you know, better able to live in this society. That's something that promotes economic prosperity. It also makes, you know, everyone's lives easier and more peaceful. And so, yeah, I don't think we need to look at it as something that's charitable, but something that we all benefit from.
Thank you very much, Amira, and thanks to everyone of the panelists. I think we had an extremely fruitful discussion. As I said, I mean, just before launching the debate, we touched upon a number of particularly relevant aspects, such as the topics or the issues of promoting a culture of cohesion through or by coming together, by pooling resources, by existing resources, by promoting avenues and pathways for communication. Obviously, resources are not unlimited, so we need to find a way to better apply them towards our objectives. This will allow us as well to overcome the challenges existing at all levels, at the community level, the micro level, at the regional level, the national level. And, I mean, also always keeping in mind that this bestows its effect upon the international level. I mean, the macro-est of levels. We've touched upon the role of technology and how much potential it contains, provided that it is applied in a positive fashion. Saleh just gave a very evident example of how technology can also distort a message. So it is essential to tap into this and to ensure that it is appropriately used. We focus as well on issues of sustainability of interventions, sustainability that allows for making the multiplier effects of the interventions more durable. We focused as well on issues related to promotion of cultural rights and rights-based approaches. We touched upon, I mean, as a concluding remark, we touched upon something that is, I mean, more or less the overarching issue here, sharing. I think none of us will be able to achieve anything on our own. We obviously know this as an idea that we keep in each other's works, in each other's lives. But it is through these initiatives, and I thank once again the Global Compact for putting this very exciting event. It is through sharing that we end up establishing these avenues and pathways for collaboration. Insofar as we are all here, and we will have the chance to discuss and to debate. So thanks once again to every one of you, and I now would like to open the floor for questions. I think we have already. I will take perhaps. Let's start with 3 questions. The lady over there, a colleague from the Global Compact, and the lady over there. If you please can introduce, just present, mention your name and your organization, and before you pose the question. Thank you.
I'm Ramya Latif, international politics researcher and program consultant with Justice and Peacebuilding and former production actor in UNHCR. Actually, my question to you, Mr. Yogo, about the program itself. According to Egypt figures, the population of Egypt in 2017 approximately 97 million, and the number of migrants, and I'm talking about migrants, not refugee and asylum seekers, who are falling under the mandate of IOM, about 5 million. So it's some of 5%. So, do we have the figure for the time being for the progress of RDPP since we're closing phase 1? Of course.
I'm sorry, because it's not. There's a lot of noise around here.
Do you have figures can be shared with us about the progress of your program, especially that you are closing phase 1? And what is the targeted group or the targeted audience you are going to support among these 5 million, phase 2? Did you take into consideration the safety points of migrants and the diversity in nationality, language barrier, and other cultural barriers?
I let you go answer, but I just add that concerning our RDPP part, we reach approximately, so it was not only migrants, it was migrant and Egyptian, but we are into social cohesion, but we reach approximately 1 million web users. So for us, a web user is a web philanthropist. So even if he's not a direct beneficiary, he's an indirect beneficiary because just by clicking, he enables the good to happen. And as for nationalities, I think that Adabon has 19 nationalities, or 18, something like this, approximately. This is our part of RDPP.
It's okay. I have this microphone. Yes. We have to bear in mind first off that the RDPP is a regional project. So we're not based only in Egypt. Actually, the project is headquartered in Tunis. So we have interventions in Morocco, in Algeria, to a lesser extent, in Tunisia, in Libya once again to a lesser extent, and in Egypt. Each of these interventions is obviously under a common framework, but we have relative autonomy to reach out. For instance, Basita also collaborated in Tunisia.
We are.
Yes, collaborating in Tunisia, indeed. But indeed, I mean, this is each of the interventions is more or less segmented. So I would be mostly comfortable in referring to what is going on here in Egypt. Now, I mean, the RDPP is an extremely varied intervention that, I mean, by and large seeks to promote cohesion, brings together the vulnerable communities here in Egypt with migrants from, and despite what Salim just mentioned, basically everyone, like every migrant group, can actually take part in this. Can be targeted, so to speak, can be a beneficiary of this initiative. So the scope is not restricted. We can work as well, for instance, with sub-Saharan migrant communities in here, which has not been so much the focus yet. Now, this depends obviously on the one hand on the work, on the geographic location of our interventions, but also on the other hand on priority areas that the government of Egypt may have, because we obviously work in response to the needs of the government. So yes, I mean, our focus areas of intervention indeed relate to priorities at the governmental level. We hope to be able, under phase 2, starting, as I said, in February 2019, inshallah, we hope to be able to have it a bit more enlarged and a bit more widespread in terms of coverage, in terms of support as well. Well, I hope that indeed that I've tried to reply to your question, but I mean also feel free to get back to us. I mean, I'll be staying here for a little while after the event. I would just like to suggest that we take like 3 questions at a time. I think it's more. So let's have our colleague from the Global Compact Network, the lady over there at this table, and then yes.
So hi, so this is Mariam from United Nations Global Compact Network Egypt, the programmatic coordinator. So actually I have 2 questions. One for Sarah, if you please, and another one for Salim. So the first question is here about regarding your activities in the community cohesion. So do you have a specific tool so you can measure this kind of an impact, if these kind of activities are meeting the community cohesion and this kind of impact? So do you have a specific tool to measure the impacts? This is the first question. And the other question for Salem, within your statistics, what is the most segment that have responses in terms of supporting the migrants? Is it the youth? Is it private sector? So this is the two questions all. Thank you very much.
Very quick. Actually, me will be very quick. I will just answer the first question that also you asked to Sarah. Unfortunately for us, we don't have yet the capacity to make an analysis of all the comments because we don't have the money to invest into such programs. But we would love to do an analysis of the comments. This was just for the and who. Generally, what we do, we have media partners. So the media will put the video in that network. For example, Egyptian Street is one of our media partners. Yom El Sabah, they put it on their Instagram account. Bushra put it on her Instagram account and Facebook. So we generally, it is from where the video goes that the public is outreach to.
Yes, let's take the rest of the questions like 3 at a time, so as to be able. Sorry, if you can get the microphone to the lady here and on this table, please.
Hi, I'm Maria. I'm from HR in my question was more related to how do you select the ideas you want to prioritize working on, and then also how do you select the ideas you want to work on, and also then how do you ensure to get the right partners involved? Do you have like a process for that, or is that more organic?
Hi, I'm Laura Khalil from Muslim Development Foundation. First of all, I would like to thank you so much for this very, very informative and fruitful session. I also like the idea that we're kind of moving now from this humanitarian approach to refugees to kind of like empowering them. In my organization, we're working on a project on refugees' resilience and self-reliance. We're enabling refugees to access the job market. And we've been doing research on this issue and meeting with different stakeholders working on that issue. And it grabbed my attention that the problem of awareness is a really, really big issue when it comes to refugees. So I really thank Mr. Amr because he pointed out to the idea that the host community, in many cases, they look to the refugees as people coming to take the resources. Whereas this is not necessarily the case. We've seen from the statistics and numbers that, for instance, Syrian refugees are contributing a lot to the Egyptian economy. Another thing is that it's very nice that we are trying as much as we can to work on social cohesion among refugees and the host communities. But also when we started to do some interviews with the private sector, we found out that many of the people running the business sector, they do not know anything about the host community, the refugees, and the cause of the refugees. And this results in problems like, for example, discrimination against refugees in the workplace, because the business owner does not know about the case of refugees. They don't know that those people come from certain areas where there are protracted conflicts, and accordingly, sometimes they leave certain acts of exploitation to take place in the workplace. We talked to Save the Children, and we found out that they work sometimes on giving trainings to managerial positions inside factories in order to tell them how to deal with problems inside the workplace, how to reduce certain forms of discrimination, how to raise awareness among Egyptian labor force in regards to the community of refugees that might be working among them. So my whole point is that it's really nice to go to those communities in their areas and improve their idea about who the refugees are, but I guess also refugees work in the Egyptian job market. And accordingly, we need to address this issue of social cohesion inside the workplaces themselves. And I also want to thank Mr. Steinem because he brought the idea that whenever we Google refugees, we find out that they have generally in Google or whatever images we come across.
Migrants.
And migrants. This negative image. So I guess generally working on the idea of awareness, it's really, really important. It's not just only that I give the refugee a project to work on, or that I just give them access to some factories and companies to work inside, but I guess also the idea of understanding who the refugee is who the migrant is, who the asylum seeker is. I guess it's very, very important. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think there was still a question directed at Sarah, so I will invite Sarah to...
Okay, so answering to your question, in alia we don't use a specific tool to measure something like social cohesion, but from my personal perspective, I believe that it's a very agile term to measure in terms of using just one tool or one item to box it in this definition. But I believe that if we set certain indicators by measuring the progress that we make over a certain group over a longer period of time, this is how we can measure something like social cohesion, because it's something that is intangible, not like a numerical aspect that we can measure easily with a tool or something like this. But something that Zainab also said about the idea of outreach. So I believe like if we are able to outreach to more people using digital tools, then we can see that there is a progress, and we can see that we can gain more accessibility. I think something like Alia had mentioned in one of her answers, the fact that getting people together in one place who share a common challenge is something that unites people together. So by default, it's going to become a norm. And this is what we try to do. If for example, an employment, or not unemployment, the social innovation program, we had groups of Syrians and Egyptians, but they were mostly divided according to their nationalities. I think that the success story would be that eventually in 1 or 2 or 3 years, we have mixed groups of these people coming together, not by us forcing them to make these groups, but by them coming themselves with their teams and with their projects all together. So this is what I mean by indicators, how we can measure, if you want to measure it as a numerical value. But I believe that the term is too big to just consolidate it in just one tool. And for any questions, I can just go to her. You said something about choosing the partner and how we do it, or is it just done haphazardly? But I believe that from our point of view, and this is something that I want to mention actually, that in 2 of our 3 interventions, we've done programs rather than trainings, the typical just vocational training, and just we give them a skill and then they have to go ahead and work with it. So no, we created a full program, we developed a needs assessment, understood what they wanted, what the Syrians and the Egyptian youth wanted, and what do they need, what does the market need. We understood what kind of jobs our employers that may be asking for, and then we developed a training that is tailored to these needs, and finally we connected them to the job market. And in order to do so, we cannot do it as an novelty on its own, so we needed to get a community partner that has the trust, as Amira said, gains the trust of Syrians and Egyptians and capitalize on our networks. So we partnered with Khatwa, which is an NGO that works with mainly with Syrian students, and they gave us a lot of access to closed groups and to offline channels. And at the end, the final part and the beginning part about the assessment, the final part about the connection to the job market, we partnered with WhatsApp, which is an employment platform, and they both gave them the training on how to write their CVs, how to search for jobs, how to create a profile. And I think someone mentioned something about the contextualizing the languages and the dialect, and this is why instead of using just WhatsApp, the English platform, we use their sister company Forasna, which is basically the same, it has the same model, but it offers different kinds of jobs, and it's all in Arabic, so it's more accessible to our target groups.
I don't know if, let me just confirm whether your question was...
No, I think, absolutely, but it was more, it was more to understand if the process has been organic, so that you have been working on a project and then sort of like realized, oh, now we need this type of partner, and then you have sort of been going out, finding out who will be the most suitable, and also have you sort of, how have you looked at the variety of partners, so it was more just to understand.
Okay. No, I mean, very briefly, yes, indeed. I mean, with the project documents, we have, more or less a way forward. We know what we want to achieve. So both on this intervention and as well on another one that is not what brings us here, but still it would be relevant to mention on the 3RP initiative that we have. So basically, it is the Egyptian national project under the UNHCR framework on the work with the Syrian refugees. We work directly with Syrian refugee women here in Egypt. We work more or less on the same perspective and along the same lines. So we want to promote access to health. We want to promote access to education, to provide livelihood opportunities, and to promote community cohesion. So along these lines, we find that on the one hand we have we have the support of the Egyptian government, provided that our interventions focus not just vulnerable populations of migrants, of asylum seekers, and refugees, but also that we branch out to Egyptian communities. So this is more or less like a standard condition that is very much understandable insofar as the idea is to promote social and community cohesion. So along these lines, we sometimes indeed, we decide we want to promote so intervention, or we want to tread along a certain path. Sometimes we reach out to service providers that we have worked with for some time, or sometimes it is through discussions that we have with these service providers that we have the idea to move ahead. And then it's a simple call for proposals, launching a call procedure, and then yes, we move ahead very or as swiftly as possible. What we see is that this is something that I mentioned in the beginning in my presentation, is that we find that the capacity to penetrate, to reach into these communities is usually much higher by involving both non-governmental organizations and community-based organizations alongside the private sector partners. So it is this kind of triple approach that allows us to get more deeply into the community. I hope this is okay. Excellent. Thank you. Ahmed, you wanted to?
I want to answer here. The fear of sharing resources, it's not anywhere in the world. Our community is always worried of sharing the resources, even in Europe. It's the same. The idea what Hugo was saying at the beginning, that till 2030, there will be 1.5 million job seekers, and only the Egyptian market will generate or offer 50% of this. So you could imagine what will happen, even if you add to them refugees or asylum seekers or migrants. So that's why we still believe that entrepreneurship for Egyptians and non-Egyptians and host communities could be one of the solutions. Then for the job, there is something else also nobody takes into consideration before. There is no up-to-date any analysis or assessment about the skills that those migrants they have. Nobody knows. We don't know how many doctors, how many engineers, how many nurses, how many first aid, how many plumber, how many, we don't know. Nobody knows even how to use them or to absorb them in the Egyptian market. Nobody knows about. There is no baseline saying that this year we received, or let's say there is 100,000 from this nationality. We have from them, out of them, civil engineers, we have plumbers, so we don't know. So, and then when you connect it to the Egyptian labor market, then there is the local laws, which is not only Egyptian, everywhere in the world, so it's a bit, difficult, it's a bit challenging. But that's why we're always insisting about innovative solutions, unusual jobs, Like for example, if you work in the IT sector, nobody knows that Egypt is one of the biggest exporters for IT solutions worldwide. You know, nobody knows this. The Egyptian companies, refugees could work in this sector, but we don't know which skills. We don't know because it's export. They are working from Egypt, but they are serving Europe. They are serving South Europe, and they are serving other countries in the region. But nobody knows. There is no baseline to say that we have these skills to start working on it.
Thank you, Amr. Are there more questions to follow up on? We have one in here. Can you please introduce yourself?
Of course. Okay, good afternoon to you. My name is Nadam Roussel. I'm a student in October 6 University and a member of the Student Cultural Committee in the university. I was having a question to Amira, and it's quite like very specific regarding a very important aspect among the students that are migrants. Okay, the problem that they are facing, and from also a personal experience, that they might be facing some sort of racism or people who are not preferring to deal with those migrants, which causes, like, of course, a very big rate of course, irritation. They don't want to continue in studying anymore, and it's not only among children, but even students at the higher grades, such as the secondary also grades in the schools. So I was wondering what kind of awareness can be embedded, especially regarding the people who practice this racism, or how the interventions can be used in such a case. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for bringing that up. And absolutely what you said, like this racism or discrimination, it's not only, I mean, we work with children and they're the most open segment. You know, children, they don't have these embedded ideas of people that are different. They hear from their families, from their communities, and they, you know, based on that, they act. So it's really easy to engage with them. One of the things that we do as a way to engage with the parents of the children and to start working with like older age groups is we engage them through the program itself. Giving extra emphasis. Working with parents. We engage them through seeing that their children are learning about other cultures and other groups, and becoming friends with people from other cultures or other religions or any kind of difference. And that's something they see as a positive thing, and so that makes them kind of more open to that. But I think in terms of university setting, or even like some people were talking about in terms of different industries and employment settings, I mean, there need to be programs there that engage people to change their mindsets. You know, that's something that needs to be embedded into those systems. And like sometimes universities around the world, they have something called a diversity component, where they have like cross-cultural, like as part of the standards of the university. So I don't know to what extent if that's embedded in the curriculum of the university, but those kind of things are really important, like making it a part of the educational system, to learn about diversity and tolerance, and make it in a kind of systemic way, because that's such a core part of our world. Like, you know, we're also talking here about how migrants, you know, in every country in the world, we're all migrants. Like this, you know, our human history is a story of migration. You know, it's the most essential thing, but we act as if it's like a new phenomenon or something like that, and we have these stereotypes and these ideas. So I think it just really takes us kind of making efforts to make that more mainstream and to build awareness about how inherent migration is, how inherent diversity is, in university settings and employment settings. And so for me, we're developing ongoing programs to work with older age groups too. So maybe we can come to the university.
Excellent. I would like to ask if there are still a few more questions and follow up. I see that eventually everyone is either satisfied or very hungry and ready to move on to the final stage of this, more important stage of this event. I think we had a pretty interesting set of discussions. I am very happy, very fortunate to have taking part as a moderator in this session, and very happy as well to have shared this panel with my colleagues here to my left and to my right, Hedi, Sarah, Amr, Amira, and Salim. They're all, I mean, they're not just partners, but they're all very good friends of IOM. They have been working with us for a while. I would like once again to thank each and every one of you for your attention. To thank the Global Compact once again for their efforts in the organization. I think I was not fortunate to be here yesterday, but I'm fortunate to be here today, and I think everything is looking great, and congratulations to you guys. Also, thanks to my colleagues in IOM that have also provided support in to this endeavor. And I think we look forward to having a fruitful post-event debate, if you will. So please join us, and thank you once again for